In 1912, American architect Walter Burley Griffin looked at a patch of Australian land and declared his intention to build, quote, "a city that meets my ideal of the city of the future." To Griffin and the early European settlers, the serene, pastoral expanse, known as the Limestone Plains, looked like a perfectly blank canvas. It was quiet, wide open, and seemingly waiting for a grand master plan to impose order on the bush. But the layout of this region was already determined. Over hundreds of millions of years, tectonic collisions, vanished oceans, and intense volcanic eruptions drafted a strict geographical blueprint. When visitors look at the beautiful, rounded summits surrounding modern Canberra, they see picturesque scenery. A geologist looks at those exact same hills and sees the raw, functional materials required to keep a civilization alive. Building a permanent capital requires a very specific checklist: millions of tons of stone, natural catchments to trap drinking water, and solid ground to anchor structures. The extreme violence of Australia's deep past deposited those exact ingredients right here. To find the source of that foundation, we have to rewind 480 million years. Back then, the land where Canberra and Queanbeyan now sit was completely submerged beneath a deep, dark ocean. Fine silt and sand rained down in the darkness, settling quietly on the undisturbed seafloor. Layer by layer, the immense weight of the water and the accumulating deposits slowly compressed that loose sediment into dense, solid beds of mudstone and shale. Then came a massive tectonic collision, known to geologists as the Benambran orogeny. The Earth's crust buckled under immense pressure. That extreme crushing force violently folded the ancient ocean floor, thrusting it high above sea level and transforming the deep basin into solid rock. You can still see the physical evidence of this impact today. At the State Circle cutting, layers of that warped ancient seabed are fully exposed to the open air. And sitting directly adjacent to that geological scar is the Australian Parliament House. The most powerful political building in the country relies on the crushed, folded remains of a half-billion-year-old ocean to keep its foundations perfectly stable. That tectonic upheaval eventually triggered an intense phase of volcanic activity. Enormous volumes of molten magma injected straight into the surrounding crust, scorching the region from the inside out. The extreme heat and pressure from those intrusions baked the existing rocks, forging concentrated pockets of highly usable mineral resources. When early settlers arrived, they found deposits of shallow sea limestone near ACT and Queanbeyan, which they immediately harvested to mix massive quantities of cement. Over on the eastern slopes of Brindabella, they quarried the baked shale to manufacture the millions of bricks required to build up the new capital. They even mined the ancient volcanic rock directly from the earth, cutting it into the heavy stone blocks used to construct foundational structures like St. John's Church. Griffin wanted to build a city beautiful, governed by strict geometric order. He could only realize that vision because the prehistoric landscape had been violently torn apart, leaving the necessary building blocks lying conveniently close to the surface. 30 kilometers to the west, another geological feature solved the hardest problem for any inland city. Over 400 million years ago, a massive body of granite was pushed upward, forming the rugged peaks of the Brindabella Range. These mountains act as a sheer physical barrier. They abruptly halt the rolling plains and force weather systems sweeping across the continent to rise, cool, and drop their moisture. The steep, plunging topography of the Brindabellas naturally engineered a massive catchment funnel, gathering all that rainfall and feeding it directly into the Cullarin River system. Without this ancient tectonic wall deliberately capturing rain from the sky, the inland cities of Canberra and Queanbeyan would never secure enough drinking water to sustain a modern population. Because the landscape looks so worn and settled today, it is easy to assume the region's geological shaping is finished. It isn't. This map shows historical seismic activity in the Canberra region. The dense red stars mark actual earthquakes, triggered as structures like the Lake George Fault stress the bedrock. Tracing the major white fault lines intersecting these areas explains the frequent minor tremors. That ongoing seismic hum is a constant physical reminder. We might build monuments to permanence, but human habitation here is just a temporary guest on a restless tectonic plate. Geologists have a specific term for those beautifully rounded summits that define the Canberra skyline. They call them residuals, the stubborn, worn-down survivors of hundreds of millions of years of relentless atmospheric attrition. For over a century, critics have playfully derided Canberra as a good sheep station spoiled, but the ground beneath it tells a much older story. Every brick in its walls, every drop in its pipes, and every sweeping vista was prepaid for by ancient geological violence. The city of the future is permanently anchored to the deep past.